Hi everybody. Today I can solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So we're going to start with something that we did in the past. We'll call this a little bonus example. This isn't on your packet or anything anywhere. And let's say I had x squared plus x equals 2. Well, it's Mr. X squared. He wants to party. Can he party right now? Nope. The 2's got to come over. That gives me x squared plus x minus 2 equals 0. Party time, bubbles. X and x, first sign comes down. Positive and a negative is a negative. What multiplies to 2 subtracts to 1. 2 and 1. We then set each factor equal to 0. We set x plus 2 equal to 0. We set x minus 1 equal to 0. We get x equals negative 2. We get x equals 1. Those are my answers. This is nothing new. This is a previous lesson that we did. To solve quadratic equations, we bring everything to one side. We factor. We set each side equal to 0. We set each factor equal to 0. Now, the first example in today's lesson, I see Mr. X squared. He wants to party. So I bring everybody over. X squared plus x minus 1 equals 0. Party time, bubbles. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 1 and subtract to 1. Well, what multiplies to 1 and subtracts to 1? Uh-oh. Bubble machine is broken. There are no numbers that multiply to 1 and subtract to 1. This can't be factored. So Mr. X squared has all of his friends over. They're ready to party. Their beloved bubble machine's broken. So what's he going to do? Well, he's going to bust out his guitar and sing his song. So let's pull up his song. So Schlansky.com. Let me get this pulled up here. Let me just pause it for a moment while I get it pulled up. All right, and here's his song.
X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a.
Yeah. So his song is the quadratic formula. So, where am I? To solve quadratic equations, many of them can be factored. However, if it cannot be factored, then we use the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So, a, b, and c are the coefficients of my trinomial. So a is what's in front of the x squared, b is what's in front of the x, c is my constant. So in this case, a is 1, b is 1, and c is negative 1. So I'm going to substitute those values into my formula. Now let's talk about negative b. Negative in a formula means change the sign. So if it's positive, make it negative. If it's negative, make it positive. Since b is 1, I'm going to put negative 1. If b was negative 1, I would have put positive 1. Plus or minus the square root of 1 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 1, all over 2 times 1. Make sure whenever you're substituting something in, you put it in parentheses, especially this b value in here. Now, I want to go to my calculator, and I want to type in what's inside the radical. I don't want to type the radical in, just what's inside the radical. So I'm going to do 1 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 1, and I get 5. So I get negative 1 plus or minus radical 5 over 2. Now my next step is to reduce the radical off to the side if possible. I can't reduce radical 5, so I am done. There are going to be examples where we have to go further, but if I can't reduce the radical, then I'm done. Let me pull up the steps on this. They're in the front of your packet. I'm going to pause. So these are the steps for your quadratic formula. You want to put it into the same form as we do for factoring. Bring everything to one side. List your a, b, and c values. Substitute them into the formula. Type the discriminant. We don't really need to be too familiar with that term. Type it it's underneath the radical into the calculator. Then reduce the radical. This is where students tend to get messed up. Off to the side, if possible. We couldn't do that in this example, so we're done at step 4. And then we're going to reduce from all 3 terms. Again, it's an if possible. If we can't reduce the radical, then we can't reduce from all 3 terms. And separate into 2 fractions. There's an I involved, so we'll see that when we see that. But you want to have these to refer to help keep you organized. And at this point, I want to try number 2. Mr. X squared, he wants to party. Can he party right now? Yes. So we want to try and factor it. If I try and do bridge, are there 2 numbers that multiply to 6 and subtract to 6? No. Bulb machine's broken. Quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. List your a, b, and c values. A is 2, b is 6, c is negative 3. So it's x equals negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 3 all over 2 times 2. Next, I type what's inside the radical into the calculator. Don't type the radical in, just what's inside the radical. 6 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 3. I get 60. X equals negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 60 over, I'm sorry, I don't know why I put a negative 2 there, over 4. Now this is where I stopped in the last problem, but my next step is to reduce the radical off to the side if possible. So I can reduce rad 60. That's what we did at the beginning of this unit. I want to break it down into perfect squares and non-perfect squares. It's very helpful if you have your perfect squares written out. I don't really leave a good place for them, so I'll kind of just force them in here. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100. I want to find the largest perfect square that goes into 60, not 49, not 36, not 25, 16 doesn't go in, 9 doesn't go in, 4 does. 4 times 15. So I take the square root of my perfect square. And again, we dealt with that in the first unit, in the first lesson in this unit, and you also saw it in geometry last year. And you also saw it in Algebra 1 quite a bit. So now I'm going to replace that rad 60 with 2 rad 15. And now there's one more step. I call it my triangle. Can I take something out of all 3 of those? Yes, I can take a 2 out. So I'm going to divide each of them by 2. I don't touch what's inside the radical, only what's outside the radical. And I get negative 3 plus or minus 1 radical 15, or just radical 15, over 2. And that's my answer. You did this exact lesson in Algebra 1. There's going to be one tiny little twist for it in Algebra 2. But other than that, it's really the same procedure. All right, let's continue with a couple more examples, and then I'm going to let you practice. Mr. X squared, he wants to party. Can he party right now? No. 8's got to come over. X squared plus 4x plus 8 equals 0. Party time. They want to party with bubbles. Are there 2 numbers that multiply to 8 and add to 4? No. Bulb machine's broken, so he sings his song. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. List your a, b, and c values. A is 1, b is 4, c is 8. I want you to take 30 seconds, substitute those values in. Try and do this step on your own, substitute your values in. X equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 8 all over 2 times 1. Next step, go to your calculator, type in what's inside the radical. I'll give you about 15 seconds to do that step on your own. Type in what's inside the radical into your calculator. 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 8 is negative 16. So now I'm going to rewrite that as radical negative 16, and my bottom 2 times 1 is 2. Off to the side, reduce the radical. Because there's a negative, to bring it outside, it becomes an I. Again, we did that in the first lesson in this unit. Now, 16's on my list. Rad 16 is 4, so this whole thing just becomes 4i. X equals negative 4 plus or minus 4i over 2. My final step is my triangle. Does anything go into all 3 of them? Yes. I can take a 2 out. So my answer is negative 2 plus or minus 2i over 1, which is just negative 2 plus or minus 2i. All right. At this point, why don't you try number 5 on your own? So I'm going to ask that you pause it. Okay, at this point, everyone should have tried completing number 5 on their own. I'm going to go over it. Mr. X squared, he wants to party. Can he party right now? Nope. 5's got to come over. So I add the 5 to both sides. Party time. Wants to party with bubbles. If I try bridge, are there 2 numbers that multiply to 10 and add to 6? No. Bulb machine's broken. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. List your a, b, and c values. A is what's in front of the x squared, b is what's in front of the x, c is the constant. So if b is -6, then negative b is +6. Plus or minus the square root of -6 squared minus 4 times 2 times 5, all over 2 times 2. We type in what's inside the radical into the calculator. Again, you should have already done this, so I'm not going to give you time to do it at this point. You can always pause it. You can always rewind it. -6 squared minus 4 times 2 times 5 is -4. 2 times 2 is 4. Now, off to the side, reduce the radical. The negative comes out and becomes an I. Rad 4 is 2, so I get 2i. Now, if possible, I want to reduce out of everything. Now, there is not something that reduces. However, if there's an I involved, I need to put this into what we call a plus bi form, which means I need to break it apart. So I'm going to put the 3 over the 4, and I'm going to put the 2i over the 4. So 3 over 4 is 3 over 4, plus or minus 2 over 4 reduces to 1 over 2, I. If there's an I involved, we need to break it apart into separate fractions, because for imaginary numbers or complex numbers, I need a real number plus or minus an imaginary number. So this takes practice. It takes a lot of practice. Use the key as you're practicing. Again, the most common area students mess up is they don't reduce the radical off to the side. So make sure you're reducing the radical off to the side at the right time. And that's it. Your classwork/homework is to practice this. It's very important that this gets practiced and you spend time in it. And use this video as much as you can. Again, your classwork/homework is to finish completing or solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. Have a great day.